Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of In the Dark. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I'm picking up in the aftermath of last episode. Murphy's obviously screaming in panic because she believes, Jess died in the fire or doesn't know what happened. So you have Max immediately like, all right, let's get out of here, which is super effed up that Max and Felix left her behind, especially considering what was going on. I mean, hell, even later on, Felix is like, dude, like, what should we do about the Murphy thing? He's like, I can't even talk about Jess. Like, how do we find out if she's okay? Because they can't actually go back to the arcade and check, but they need to. So they have to find a roundabout means of doing that, which Felix is like, well, I have a sister who is a lawyer, used to be a lawyer, so she has connections with law enforcement, so maybe we can find out through her, which Max is like, wait, you have a sister? And he's like, unfortunately. And so they go to meet his sister Leslie. Obviously, once again, everyone's family dynamics. Murphy's the only one whose family situation we really ever dived into. We dived into a little bit with Felix because of his mom and all that. But obviously, there's a talk about him being kind of the most unsuccessful member of his family. He's kind of like the black sheep of his family in certain regards. So, obviously, it seems like him and his sister haven't talked in like 3 years. And it's like, what's that about? And it's like, oh, like, apparently, like, she's like, yeah, the last time we talked, you called me a whore. And he was like, the context, and Max was like, what is the context? Basically, he was pissed at her because she went from a job as a lawyer to, like, something else. It was more like, oh, you're basically doing this shift for, like, the money. That's all you care about. Which, like, Felix has never been about that. He has always been about trying to do, like, nonprofit stuff and like that. But obviously, in his family, that's not good enough. It's like, oh, you're doing something like that. Oh, like, you're not doing something actually worth, living up to. It's like, their family's pretty well off and everything. So, once again, he's kind of the disgrace of the family. He tried to go his own way. That's why he dropped out from being a lawyer and stuff like that. But it's like his sister went down a route and became like something on a more, obviously, the more capitalist front. So, like, he kind of calls her out for that because I think for him it's like, oh, basically calling her money grubbing, which even, like, Max is kind of like, what? Because like it didn't, like, it's legitimately like it's such a weird thing for their family. Like, he was calling her out for like what she like had a shift in career, and just because he made it seem, it's like, oh, you shifted your career just because like this is an opportunity to have more money. That's what he kind of tries to paint her as. So at the same time, this is all going down. Murphy has been arrested. They're swabbing her DNA because they're trying to match it for the blood at the scene. But then Josh starts thinking like, well, what if the blood doesn't match Murphy's? And then like Gene's kind of like, I mean, it's going to, but if it does, it's like, right, we are going to need something like more concrete, like a confession, like just in case things don't go the way we want them to, especially because Gene's got a lot riding on this because he wants to put Murphy in a position where she's more likely to deal. And once she's dealt, he'll be able to take down the chief. So that's what that comes down to, but still keeping Josh in the dark, which, better, worse, and the way this episode plays out, it ultimately shows that it is worse. It's like the worst decision he made to do that. Like, it ultimately ends up backfiring, but we'll kind of break that down as we get to it. But obviously, Murphy's like, fine, I'll confess to whatever, I'll do it, just let me know, find out what happened to Jess. And so, while Murphy's in there, Jess comes to visit her, which I think that should be a key sign of like, well, first and foremost, this is the longest she's ever been apart from Jess, especially, never quite, well, it's been a while since she found out like what Jess's circumstances are, but initially it's a thing of, they've been like side by side since like they were kids, since like Jess came into her life as her best friend, so that's a lot. But I was also thinking, like, the fact that she keeps this happening over and over again, like, yeah, it might be a subconscious thing, but also I'm like, there might be some head trauma involved. What the fact is that, like, she might be having, like, a little bit of a mental break. I mean, considering everything, understandable, but there might be something deeper going on, like, with all these hallucinating of seeing Jess. So, I mean, hell, like, she had a full-blown hallucination multiple times, but especially the one when she was at that playground, that episode with Michael, like, that was like the most extensive one she had, because the other ones, at least it seemed like she was cognizant. That one didn't seem like it was cognizant, just kind of like, wait, this was all in my head. So that's why I'm like, there might be deeper issues there that Murphy's not really looked into, hasn't really had an opportunity to, but she might need to get checked because there might be like something like pushing on her brain that's making like those hallucinations a thing. We'll see. Maybe there'll be more to it. Maybe it won't. Maybe it just be like, oh, like her guilty conscience or just her conscience manifesting in the form of Jess, and maybe that's all there is to it. But I feel like there might be more, but we'll see. Murphy's like talking to herself, and even Josh and them kind of rewound that. Like, oh, sounds like she might just be losing it. So they kind of chalked it up to that, because Jess in her head was like, don't do it, like don't say anything. But for her, it's like, I don't like, and I would rather spend the rest of my life in prison rather than going any more, even another second longer, not knowing if you're okay or not. And she's like, oh, and that's Jess is kind of like, oh, that's sweet, but you are an idiot. And she's like, yeah, maybe. And so ultimately they find out that Jess wasn't in the fire. There was no actual bodies. At the same time, because Felix had called up Darnell and was like, well, Felix and Max had called up Darnell to be like, yo, about the whole Jess thing, which he immediately figured out it was Trey, confronts Trey. And Trey's just kind of like, yeah, I didn't like let Josiah know what was what. But it's just like, hey, I just wanted to kind of get a piece of it, and it's like that pisses Darnell off because it's like, because you knew those drugs were supposed to go to the cops, and also because of you, everything literally fell apart. Because it's like, if your boy wasn't in there trying to steal the drugs, Alex would have never caught him, so it would have gone off without a hitch, you know. But it's like, no, you had to screw the pooch on that, you know. So once again, just like the domino effect of everything kind of just not working out. So they go trying to track down Alex, and it turns out she took Jess to like, what was it, like her grandma's or something like that, to get Jess checked out because Jess was hurt. I was like, oh, dude. So like the fire was already set like before I guess Alex could go back in there and get Jess out. So she was banged up from that. But they find Jess at the hospital, which like Alex is like, yo, don't. And Darnell's like, yeah, I won't tell Josiah, because the last thing he needs is Josiah to know that Jess is alive. Because if she is, because also that finding out that Alex helped her would already be a nail in a coffin for her. But also, it's like, the whole point was like, Josiah didn't want any loose ends, anything that could be traced back to him. So Jess being alive is a liability. So there's that element to it as well. But Darnell, staying with her, letting the others know, like, oh, she's okay. I also love the fact that it's like, right, while Murphy was going through what she was going through, she ended up, because I love that they tried to get a confession out of her at first, but Murphy is like, I'm not an idiot. I know you're waiting for, like, the DNA to come back and trying to hopefully get a confession out of me. And, like, Gene and Josh are actually speechless because they're like, damn, she saw through what we were doing. It's like, Murphy's been, connected to the criminal world. Like, Nia actually really liked Murphy, because Murphy has a really good head on her shoulder for when it comes to the criminal world. Yeah, like her and the team, they kind of bumble their way through things, but she still kind of got a good head on her shoulder. She kind of got that street smart. So Nia actually really liked that a lot about Murphy. That's why they kind of vibed a little. But Murphy's like, I won't tell you anything until I know Jess is okay. Plus, I need to make sure I get my phone call. I know my rights. So she called up Felix, and it's like, obviously it's like they're gonna try and they want me to, they've got my DNA, so it's only a matter of time. But she just wants to find out, what happened to Jess. So. And now, like, Leslie, like, initially Felix is like, all right, let's leave. And then Leslie's like, what's going on? And he's like, don't worry about it. Because, like, she ended up calling, a cop friend of hers and ended up finding out that Jess was okay. And then, like, it's like, all right, Max is like, we need to let her know what's what. And I love how she got the confession out of Felix. It's like she was twisting his ear, got on top of him. It's very, very sibling-like way of handling things. And it's like, all right, we were laundering stuff for her drug dealer. And it's like, wait, it's like, why? And the cops think we murdered. Why do the cops think you? I don't know. All right, they think we did it because we actually did it. She was going to kill one of our friends, so we had no choice. And she's like, I don't know what's more shocking, that you murdered someone, or the fact is that you actually have friends. And he's like, okay, cool. And it's like, the fact is his sister took that with stride, because I think regardless of anything, it's like, you're my brother. Like, even if it's like some criminal stuff you've been up to, like, you're still my brother. So she was offering as a lawyer to kind of help them out, even though, like, Felix had his reservations about asking her for help. But I think, honestly, I don't know. It was actually kind of sweet, her being like, yeah, because when it was all said and done, like, it's like, cool, Murphy ended up breaking out. So we're going to meet up with her. Like, Jess is going to go, we're going to meet up with them at the hospital and everything. So I thought it was so interesting, like, the look on Leslie's face kind of being like, okay, well, it's almost like this thing of like, I hope it isn't another 3 years before we talk again, bro, So, and also like the looks between her and Max, I was like, oh boy, that's going to get... Well, because I love that whole thing where Felix was basically like, he talked about this, because his sister's like, oh, a 33-year-old virgin. He's like, I had sex with so-and-so, and you know it. It's like, she was like, he was like, yeah, but it still happened. And Max is like, so you're taking credit for sleeping with a girl that was too drunk? He's like, no, she had like half a beer. She was super, so I was with her the entire night. She just she just refused to admit that she didn't want to admit that we had sex. And Max is almost like, is that supposed to be better? Like, you almost act like that. It's just kind of, it's a shame. It's like, you feel so bad for Felix because apparently from Murphy's perspective, he's a good lay. So it's just everyone takes every opportunity to put Felix down. You kind of feel bad for him. But also it's like, it's because like Leslie was like, wow, so she slept with like the IRS agent and the cop and this guy, and it's like, right. Also, Felix, it's like, oh, I guess you're the only person she didn't sleep with, and it's like, that's not the case. They did. And also, like, right, there's also like the Trey situation too. So it's like, and it's like, well, Felix isn't admitting his part to play in it just because, like, well, Chupi told us he likes Murphy too, so it is just more than sex. But I don't think he's ever going to really let that out now because of the whole Trey and her thing. It's just kind of killed the mood and everything. But I don't know if that's going to change or not. But which, speaking of Trey, I did love that he showed up. He's like, brought flowers and soup. He's like, yeah, didn't really know how to apologize for almost getting you killed in a fire because I tried to steal some heroin. And like Darnell kind of laughs. It's just like, so they're slightly on better terms. But now Murphy later on does know about Trey's part to play and everything. It's like, oh, what sucks? Because like I said, Murphy and Trey was like, that bonding was actually pretty dope because even Trey being like, oh man, like he was actually vibing with Murphy. Like, oh, like she kind of understands me. But once again, it's actually Max's fault because he ran his damn mouth. Trey would have actually tried to do the right thing. He was like going to let it die and just let it be like, he was like, nah, until like Max opened his damn mouth about like, yeah, like Murphy, like blah, blah, blah. His pessimism, his hatred towards Murphy, like spoiled that whole thing. So it's like, Max will never know that he's the reason why things played out the way they did, but that is kind of on him. So speaking of Murphy, I love the fact is how she was able to get out because, Gene making those deals behind, like the moment he was telling Josh to leave, I was like, he's going to go in there and try to talk to Murphy. But it's like, he wanted to make sure he had the DNA evidence first, kind of a slam dunk so that she kind of had nowhere to go. Like, so she was cornered and he's like, all right, so wait, you're going to, okay, less than 5 years. Okay. So I'll confess everything, and puts it out there about the chief and everything. So, and then the moment she was like, no, we should let Josh arrest me. Like this, we both know that this is what he really wants. And I'm like, oh boy, I was like, what are you planning, Murphy? Are you about to turn them against each other? And Super does. It's like, oh, probably want me to get out of here because your partner doesn't want me to tell, like, oh yeah, the deal, he just cut me a deal, 5, I only served 5 years. And in that confusion, I was like, how's this going to benefit Murphy? And she took Josh's, because he, once again, just shows you how good of a head Murphy has on her, because she knows that Josh still isn't quite used to the cane thing yet, so like he constantly forgets it. It's not in his second nature like it is for Murphy to always keep her cane with her. So like the fact is he left it behind. She made sure, all right, because she was also planning this out, because remember she kept walking around the room testing the door. Okay, and I was like, they included, I was like, that's so weird. Like, the door's gonna be like, why would it? It's like Murphy was already planning her escape. She was just looking for the right opportunity. Like, I guess she figured, like, Jess inside of her head being like, don't confess. And she ultimately didn't, because it's like, oh, I'm not going to confess because you didn't find Jess. The agreement was if you found Jess. You didn't find Jess. Yes, she's alive, but you didn't find her. So, I don't know. It's like, it seems like Murphy was already maybe she had something else planned, and that plan just happened to formulate later on. But it's just like her walking around the room makes me see like she was trying to get a lay of the lands first. I was like, wow, that's actually like once again, like, Murphy legitimately has a really good head on her shoulders. You kind of underestimate that from time to time, because, like, her, like, sometimes being a douchebag kind of overshadows, like, how actually, like on top of things she kind of is and has been in the past. Like, you know, how she's, I'm not saying she's a criminal mastermind, but like I said, she's definitely got a good head on her shoulders when it comes to crime. So it's just fascinating. Other than that, like, her just slipping out, and because Josh and Jean were arguing too much, all she had to do was cover her hands and be like, oh, like, hey, what's the closest exit? Oh, thanks. Good. Happy holiday. Oh, happy holiday. It's just like, just casually strode out of a police station. And I love the guy that gave her a taxi when it's like, oh, yeah, woman this tall, brown hair and everything. And then the guy that was sweeping was just kind of like, he just kept sweeping. I'm like, I didn't do anything. She was a regular person. I didn't expect anything. Like, I didn't know she was being wanted by the cops. He's like, I'm going to pretend like I didn't hear that. He just kept doing his thing. It's like, okay. So there's that element. Max decided to go back to Canada. It's like, oh, now that he knows that Jess is okay, he's just going to go back to Canada just because he doesn't want to spend any more time around Murphy. I mean, to be fair, they were about to go, all four of them were going to be spending a long time in jail because of all of this. So it's like, now knowing that Jess is okay, I'm just going to bounce. It's like, you know, it's like, well, what do you want me to tell Murphy? It's like, I don't know, and I don't care. He's like, yeah, I'm going to sprinkle that up a little bit. So later on, when he runs into Murphy, Felix is like, oh yeah, like Max, he said goodbye and wanted me to give you one of these, and hugs her. She's like, I know he didn't say that and that this is just you, but she's like, I appreciate it and I needed that. Managed to get use a needle from inside to end up unhandcuffing Murphy. So I was like, okay. Darnell saying, like, you know, I'll see you guys, like, you know, if I'm ever that way in Canada again. Also, Felix is going to need a new identity since his got burned in Canada, the whole Gordon Howard thing. So that all worked out. Josh and Jean aren't on good terms because Josh is just like, I'm going to work this myself now. So he doesn't have police support anymore because, well, first and foremost, because he's not going to work with Jean anymore. It's like, oh, I trusted you, which I even love that Murphy used that against him. Like, you would think after me, you wouldn't be so trusting of people. Obviously, that was just to stick the knife in deeper to make him so blind with rage, because we saw how blinded with rage he got when it came to Murphy. Because even Jean was like, admit it, Murphy's the only one you want. He's like, yeah, she's the one that I wanted to get. Truth be told, it was all about Murphy. He just knew getting Max, Jess, and Felix would stick the knife in deeper. So it's almost like karma came back to bite him because of just like, you know, so it's like it kind of came back. Like, it was almost like Murphy kind of getting her slight revenge. I mean, I don't think she holds that much of resentment against Josh. To be fair, she is the bad guy in this circumstance, and he is a good guy, but he has his own personal vendetta in this. So when it's all said and done, Jean does get fired. I mean, it works out for the chief because it's like, oh, you arrested Murphy, even though I told you not to get involved in this. Like, I couldn't fire you because of disobeying orders with the whole Nia Bailey thing, but this, letting a murder suspect, her murderer, Nia Bailey's, get away, I can. So that kind of sucks because Jean's legitimately a good cop. Once again, he just went about things. If he did bring it up to Josh, Josh would not have been down for it because he wanted Murphy to go down for a long time. But that's how the law works. Like, you cut deals with people, because even Jean says it's not just about one person. Justice is about getting all the bad people involved. So, but it's like, right, Josh had his own personal vendetta, and so did Jean. So it's like, you know, they both were kind of a little selfish in their own regards, but also, like, you could make the argument Jean was looking at the bigger picture because it would have meant, like, getting rid of some corruption in the police department. But once again, it's like also lying to your partner in this situation of, like, it is kind of messed up, and, you know, obviously he lost his job, but we do see at the end that he kind of posts the recording from Murphy. So even if nothing necessarily comes about it, whether it's just kind of hearsay, it's enough to destroy his reputation. That it's enough to put it out there like, oh, is he corrupt? Oh, he did this. He covered up a cop murdering a 17-year-old. Like, that's where that's going to come down to. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see how that ends up playing out, whether they really become, because Gene was like, he even said the message of, like, I literally just got fired today, I have nothing left to lose. So he put it out there, and adding, like, the police department as well. So it's like I said, we'll see how things kind of shake out on that front. Murphy and Felix waiting outside for time for Jess's visiting hours, but by the time they wake up and Felix goes inside, Jess is going, which I mean, like, Did she get like taken? Did she run? Because it's like, right, me being in the hospital is the worst thing because you have like people start pushing and prodding too much. Because you know, Darnell talked to her a little bit, but I guess when she woke up and found no one's there, like crap. She didn't know. Well, maybe he let her know like, hey, like Murphy and Felix are on the way. Like I said, we don't, because like when we got back to the context of it, like obviously it was like. It seems like she most likely like left herself because she didn't want to like, right, everything that went down, she probably knew like, right, I'll be spending the rest of my life in jail if I get found here, so I'm just gonna run, because she probably didn't know Felix or Murphy were there. Maybe she thought they went back, cause like I don't know if Darnell told her that like, hey, they're on their way, or at the very least they're going, well, because by the time they were there, it's like, oh, like she's already sleeping again, and like obviously visiting hours are over. But it's like when we come back to Jess, she's running and it's black and white, kind of like the earlier in the season when we got that flash forward, once again very much like the Nia and Chelsea's brother situation from last season. So we're getting that again, but like I guess just from her wounds from like pulling out the IV and stuff like that, she's still bleeding, not unless that's related to the whole being attacked situation, because she's running and she's bleeding more than I feel like she should be just from the hospital thing. So I think that is even further in the future. Like I said, whether like she was taken or whether that's her running after whole being in the car and being attacked, who knows? Stuff is still completely out of context. So like I said, it just seemed like, why would she run other than the reasons I kind of gave? So it seemed like someone might have taken her, but I don't know. Maybe Josiah found out that she was still alive. Or maybe that's extra reason why she left, because it's like, crap, I can't stay here. Josiah might find out I'm alive and come and kill me, make sure I'm dead this time. So maybe all of that are contributing factors, but it's going to be interesting to see ultimately where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.